You're watching SKST Radio.
Well, welcome to SKST Radio, and this is Real Talk with Cammie, Grayson, and friends, and I have a new friend. He goes by the name of Matthew Bauer. Hello, Matthew. Welcome to the show.
Very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. So Matthew is a famous director slash documentary person, and he is somebody who we need to know, and he needs to know us and tell us all about himself. So Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I wouldn't call myself famous, but thank you very much.
This movie is going to be the bomb.
No, I appreciate it, Cammie. Yeah, I am Australian. I grew up in Australia. I actually ended up going to NYU Film School, which is an American school, obviously. And then, I live in England, where I made this documentary, which is called The Other Fellow, which is about the lives of real men around the world whose name is James Bond, which is how we get here today.
Very cool. So how did you come up with the concept of The Other Fellow?
So I was, funnily enough, do you remember in the early days of Facebook, there were a lot of kind of weird Facebook groups? You know, like I was a member of a Facebook group called like slow walking people should be hit in the back of the head. Do you know what I mean? There were just these dumb, random Facebook groups. And someone made one for everyone called Matthew Bauer on Facebook. It was called Embassy, almost like a bad club night, like MBASY, the Matthew Bauer Appreciation Society. And what all of the Matthew Bauers on Facebook would talk about was stuff like who's got Matt Bauer at gmail.com, who's got Matthew Bauer at gmail.com, you know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, when you try and sign up for an online account, Cammie, and your name's already taken and you go, that must be another Cammie Grayson out there somewhere. So I then went, what if your name was James Bond? How would that affect this kind of thing? And so quite quickly, I went on Facebook and searched for James Bond, and the journey kind of started there. And yeah, from the very beginning, these things were clear. So none of my characters were called James Bond on Facebook. They were all called like Bond James or JB Bond or something. And it's because if you try and sign up for Facebook as James Bond, it doesn't let you do it because it thinks you're using a false identity. It actually says you can create a fan page for James Bond 007, but you can't make a page for yourself. So even with this kind of especially online identity stuff, I pretty quickly saw that. And then once I did get through to some of them, even though I was expecting all the Aston Martin jokes and the shaken not stirred jokes and that kind of thing, actually they were coming back with stories about being on the run from the police with this name and being on the run from stalkers with this name and dealing with these really interesting kind of issues of like identity theft and identity confusion and these kind of things which were in themselves very cinematic. And yeah, that's why I decided to go ahead and make this film. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have the trailer. Do you mind us taking a look at the trailer so people can see what we're discussing?
Years on, a Bond film is still as big an event as ever.
My God, it's enormous. I mean, everybody knows James Bond. Everyone's seen the films.
It is a little bit like a plague of locusts. It's crazy with the noise that's created by it.
Most of us know James Bond as the dashing British agent 007, but the real James Bond was a man from Philadelphia.
Just how did Ian Fleming's 007 get his name?
I've studied music.
Do you know why we're making this film?
Because you want to know what it's like to be a James Bond.
My name is Bond.
Bond.
James Bond.
Det är mitt liv. Allting som har med James Bond.
You can't be an introvert to be a James Bond. It's impossible.
Imagine being told the same joke every day for a couple decades.
My name is Bond. James Bond.
And he's like, you're right, I'm Donald Duck. Get on the ground, get on the ground. His name, in this case, is going to haunt him.
A name is something that identifies you. All it does is pinpoint where you are. He told me that he would kill me.
använda den i form av att söka efter min far som är försvunnen.
All units, we have a location on a homicide suspect. Name Bond. James.
If I was a real James Bond, I would never got caught because James Bond killed plenty of people and he's still out there. So if he kills somebody, hey, okay, well that's James, that's the white James Bond. But the black James Bond, oh, he's doomed.
It has been both a blessing and a curse.
He just admitted that he took it, just lifted it, stole it.
And I thought, well, now, James Bond, now that's a pretty crap name.
Wow.
There's a lot of James Bonds, right? So my email address is the.other.james.bond. I'm the other one.
That is so interesting. So, I got to ask, right? The James Bond that's in prison, how did you find this guy?
So, as we didn't have him originally, we were kind of midway through filming when I obviously kind of am used to being able to find kind of real James Bonds, and we came across a news story, and it was actually a white man from South Bend, Indiana, and the story was about how he had been confused for a murder suspect whose name was James Bond, and so that clued us off that there was a murder suspect in prison called James Bond. And so we eventually found him, and his name is James Bond Jr. And he's an African American who was in prison. I say that because it sort of becomes relevant in the story we ended up telling. Mm-hmm. But he was in prison, and I wrote to him in prison, which is something probably the most journalistic thing I've ever felt. I had no idea how to do it, but I wrote to him in prison, and then his girlfriend kind of got the letter kind of through to him, and then he said, yes, I would love to be in your film, which I was surprised at given what he was going through at the time, but he kind of agreed to do it. And then it was really interesting learning how it worked. There's a whole system where you have to we started on the phone, and you have to buy them credit in the Indiana prison system so that then they can kind of make a call through to you and all of that kind of thing. So we ended up kind of speaking, and he agreed to be interviewed. And then, during the course of the film, we find out how his trial and things goes. And I don't want to spoil it, but we find out whether or not he gets convicted or not. But obviously, the kind of interesting thing for him was actually what it is like to be a black James Bond in America, because we wanted these characters who are the opposite of what we think of James Bond as, because we thought that would kind of create the most kind of interesting dynamics. So kind of in New York, we found a homosexual James Bond who obviously has to deal with all of the, womanizer kind of sides of it. And then for kind of James, we wanted to see what it was like as a black James Bond, because whenever a new Bond is being chosen, e.g. right now, the media is always like Idris Elba should be the new James Bond, and what that kind of ignites is a public debate about what we see James Bond as being and what we see James Bond kind of as not being. And so we kind of wanted him in there to kind of reflect that. And he's dealt with a lot of it because of it, and he deals with a lot of people being like, you can't be James Bond, you're black. And then obviously also on top of that, when he obviously after the murder charge, he then gets all these Facebook comments and jokes coming up about oh, this guy thinks he's got a license to kill. And all of these kind of jokes about this quite kind of serious thing that was going on. So we found him, and then of course we contacted the other guy in Indiana who was in that original news story and said, could you be part of our film as well? And he is a MAGA hat wearing, Trump voting gun nut, right? And who obviously is quite the opposite of James as well. And we followed his kind of story. And of course, what had happened is when the murder happened, and it came out on the airwaves, James Bond charged with murder. I mean, this was in the media in South Bend far more than a standard shooting I don't want to say standard shooting, but you know what I mean, that a standard shooting
yeah.
would be. All because they could go with the James Bond arrested for murder headline. But at first, sorry, have I lost you there?
No, I'm still here.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, we changed.
We changed camera. Yeah. At first, it just went out on the airwaves, you know, and they didn't have a photo up of him yet. So when it came out, James Bond charged with murder, of course, this guy who was the gun nut, you know, and all of his pictures on Facebook are him like hunting with his guns. When it's like James Bond charged with shooting murder, he starts getting calls at his office, and he actually works with like disabled children. So he works for a company called the Turkey Track Foundation. And what they do is take disabled kids out hunting. So he's getting calls from all the parents being like, my son was out hunting with this guy last week, yada, and he's having to say, no, it's not me. I'm not the one that's wanted for murder, yada, yada. So then kind of we were able to tell kind of their sort of story. And then at the end, we managed to sort of bring them together to kind of meet and have a bit of a chat. And I think, you know, for me, you know, coming back to the kind of original point of this, these guys, they're opposite skin colors. They are opposite political persuasions. Right. They're really different men. They both owned handguns, which is how this happened, but they're very different men. Yet they were able to come together and bond over this one thing they had in common, which is they're both called James Bond. And they were able to kind of find a real sort of solace together and kind of talk about, you know, obviously the experience they'd gone through with the murder trial and things like that. And so, sorry, I've kind of ruined the whole story in the film. But yeah, that was definitely one of our kind of most interesting things we came across. So it was a very long answer.
So do you guys have a lot of touring? Are you guys doing a lot of film festivals right now?
Yeah, we are. We did a lot kind of around the world, kind of in New Zealand, Australia, Europe. We did the Austin Film Festival. Here we are playing the Alameda Film Festival here in California tonight. I'm sorry. And then tomorrow is the general release of the film. So yeah, it's coming out in theaters tomorrow, but that's only in select cities. But yeah, it's also being released on streaming at midnight tonight. So it'll be available on Apple TV, Amazon, and all those kind of places you get those.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, the movie is great. Well, documentary is great. I keep wanting to call it a movie because it's James Bond, you know, but the documentary is great. You did a great job. I think you're going to go a long way with this documentary. There's a lot of research, and, you know, the people had great personalities too. You know, I mean, great sense of humor, especially the guy in jail. I mean, he's like, you know, this wouldn't have happened, but at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is, and you just kind of have to go with the flow.
Yeah, I mean, especially with him, I only spoke with him on the phone at first, and I actually had no idea when we got him on camera he would be such a kind of personality on camera. And kind of in the end, the main characters in our documentary were the ones who just have that kind of star quality in the interview, kind of when you kind of get them on. But no, they're a very big varied range, and probably I think it's about half American James Bonds, and then otherwise ones from kind of England and Europe especially.
Yeah, well, it's so cool, so cool. And Matthew, I appreciate you so much sharing your story with us, and tell people again how they can see this movie.
So it will be available from midnight tonight you can pre-order it now on Apple TV. It will also be available on Amazon and kind of anywhere where you buy kind of video on demand content, so like Google Play, Xbox, that kind of thing. And then if you do happen to be in New York, it is playing this weekend at Cinema Village. For the next like week or so there. And it will be playing some other theaters kind of around the US in coming weeks as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Matthew, you got a new friend here. If I can help you with anything, promote anything else, any of your works, just let us know. We're here for you. We'll try to get the word out there the best way we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Can I get a copy of this somehow, Cami?
Yes, you sure can. You sure can. You can, I guess you can find me on social media, or do you have a handle that you want me to, or you can send it through the studio. Just let me know.
Yeah.
I'm happy to get it to you.
I'll have a look for you. I'd love to have a look.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
And then we'll invite you back if you don't like it because of the internet issues. We can most definitely get you back.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, I hope you're able to hear me okay. All right. Thank you so much, Cami.
Thank you so much. Have a good show.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.